Welcome. It is showtime in Hamilton. Speaking of showtime, somehow you should get your hands on the secondary school production of Grease. It was amazing. So you should, I'm just supporting our students and saying that if you want a treat, you should just get that video, and I assure you, you will be blown away by the students. So welcome to our, I guess this is our fourth strategic planning session. And I will say at the out, I'm Dr. Alston, Superintendent of Schools. If I don't know you and you don't know me at this time, we've got bigger issues than a strategic plan. Just check us all in. So one of the things that is shaking out is it looks like we're running out of time in terms of getting a strategic plan done. Fortunately, I was working on a conference call with the CEO, Penny Ciaburri of PLC and Associates, to try and eke out more time and look at our grant funds. This is being funded by a grant, so it's not coming from the general budget. So that if we believe that this is valuable to a district, that we can add some additional time. So more to come on that, but just know you shouldn't be worried that we're running out of time and there's still more work to be done. I wanted to start this evening off with a quote from a book that's about over 100 years old, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, because it'll help frame the work for tonight. And Allen says, "Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, yet unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound." Men are anxious, men and women, but again, 100 years ago, a whole lot of different things going on. Trust me, I know. Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, yet unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. So why don't you just take a minute and talk to somebody about that and what that might mean in the sense of a strategic plan or organizational improvement.
What else do you do? Look at more data.
Okay, let's tie it in, and if we have any one person willing to share out, that would be really, well, two people, because why not? Balance. Anyone from this billiard table want to, you don't have to go, but you can call on someone from your table.
So what we're just saying is unless you can reflect on what you need to change to meet the goal of the change, then you're stuck. The change isn't going to occur because the circumstances can't change unless you're willing to change them.
Okay, thank you so much. Why don't you pass to somebody else?
Well, I can assign someone.
Yeah, why not?
I think Tim Mansfield.
I didn't want to make eye contact.
He was like, please leave me alone.
I'm going to share some good comments that were shared here, that we all need to own this process, not as the school or others need to do. We, as the different roles that we have, need to own it. Kevin said something about reflective leadership, reflective mindset. Yeah, I was just thinking about that great quote that just made me, I'm still processing.
I don't know if that really
It doesn't fit.
100%.
Right. But it's easy to look outward and say it's your problem, their problem, and not have a role in sort of doing something with it, but we should.
Excellent. So that sets the kind of table for what we're going to do tonight in terms of looking at more data. And I just want to add another lens to kind of look at the work we're going to do tonight and see, excuse me, challenges. I'm reading this book right now. I really like it. It's called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And in effect, it's the timeless art of turning trials into triumph. And rather than seeing things as problems, they're like opportunities to elevate. So everything is an opportunity to elevate. Every opportunity, even though it poses itself as a challenge, it actually can be a really good thing. And I'll give you an example. It's a true story. Went to the doctor and got diagnosed of having early stage prostate cancer. He was like, ooh, not so good. So they go and they tell them, well, you're going to have to get this, I think, seeds, and it'll be fine, and it has a high success rate. And then they go to get this surgery, and then they say, I don't like the way the circulation is going to your lower extremities. I said, okay. So they said, they did a heart check, and they said, well, we've got to put stents in. Then they go in to put the stents in, and they said, no, this is all clogged up. You need triple bypass. And they said, if we didn't catch this, you are a time bomb. So the obstacle, the prostate cancer, which now he still has to get, now that he's recovering from, is like, this was a great opportunity to save his life. So it's a matter of looking at it and dealing with it. So now that's nowhere near what we're dealing with tonight, but it's just another way of looking at the challenges that life gives us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to a much lighter Donna and Tammy, who will lead us in tonight's work. Thank you.
Hi everybody, so glad to be back. I can't believe how fast the time goes in between these meetings, right? I just would like to comment on what Dr. A was saying with this book. Something I learned over the last, since 2010, with this whole process of the change in APR and all of that stuff, it kind of made me, as a teacher, feel a little bit of angst. But I got to meet all of these really very interesting strategists who did exactly what he's saying. They take a crisis and they don't look at it as a crisis, they look at it as how can we find the silver lining here and how can we really use it. So very powerful statement, very powerful book, I am so sure. So last week we looked at some data, we talked about our mission statement. So while I'm bringing up this video so you can see who was on camera last time, sort of talk amongst yourselves about what happened last time and maybe some reflection that you might have engaged in over last month. So if you would turn your workbooks to page 18 and take a few minutes to review 18 through 21 and then talk about it at your table. It's going to give you a lot of information on strategic intents. So as you read in pages 18 through 21, the strategic intents are that overall measurable goal. What is our ideal state in 5 years? So if you look at that page 21, it seems like it might be more, but it can be unpacked. So the art and science of teaching, there are many instructional strategies in that book. So if your 5-year plan is that all teachers will be trained in those instructional practices, that would be your strategic intent. And what could come out of that in the action plans? The action plans are very specific steps that will help you reach the goal. Because sometimes when we set goals and we don't set steps to get there, we're all like flailing trying to figure out how are we going to get there. So your plan will have a strategic intent, and then it will have a bunch of different action plans to get there. So if you look at, let's see, page...
So I'm going to interject real
Sure.
quickly. And Cammy's going to get to talking about this, but there were some questions about this. The core team will come up with the big goals, the umbrella type goals. Then your task forces are actually going to dive into those goals that you have, and they'll come up with the action steps. And they're going to be reporting back to you at the core team meetings so that you know, because you're the guiding coalition for this plan, so that you know what those are, and if there's anything else you think they need to look at, or you have questions, you don't understand why they chose something, then you'll have that opportunity to share with them, and they'll bring that back to their group. Does that make some more sense to you?
Right. So if you look at page 18 and look at example 4 with all the different teaching strategies on there, so that strategic intent on 21 can be untapped into these instructional practices. So say that you, as a core team, decide that high academic performance is one of your task forces, and innovative teaching practices is really a focus. You want something very specific. If you choose Marzano, or if you choose whoever you choose as a best practices, you would be very general in your intent, but then you would give it to your team, and your task force teams, and then they will go out and research best practices, what's happening now, where do we want to be, and they will come up with those action steps on ways to get you there. So an example might be all teachers will be trained in the use of learning targets in the classroom. And then another action plan from that will be, you can't just let it go there. There has to be some sort of monitoring and evaluation. So another action plan might be building principals will come up with a walkthrough tool that shows that teachers are utilizing that practice in the classroom. So does that make sense? It'll be very,
Please ask questions
Yeah.
anytime that you're not following, because we've done this a few times and we understand that you haven't. Although, everybody's raising their hand. So we want to help you to understand the process,
Yeah.
because again, Tammy, we like to tell people you are the ambassadors for this process, and you need to be able to be comfortable explaining it to anyone who may ask.
Right.
Yeah.
So the task force will be the people that dive deeper in the data to inform their steps. Is that
No.
true?
no. They
No.
won't be diving into the surveys and things like that. You will have already done all of it at work. This team is
Okay.
going to decide what the names of those, what the focus of those task forces will be, and what the strategic intents will be. They will not be changing any of that.
Okay.
So
They
They're
will
gonna-
come up with how do we get here.
They're
So
going to dive into your goal.
yes, they'll dive into your goal. They will do research. They may even want to interview more people, but they won't go back and do the work that you've already done. They will know you have set these intents. You have decided that by 2020 there will be a full-blown 8th grade, integrated system of science, math, technology, whatever. So you have set that intent. Then it's their job of how are we going to get there? What are our steps? And they will go out and look at best practices and decide, well, we need to do this, 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 and this, and this. And it'll be very specific so that whoever then comes in to take on that job, to monitor it, will have it outlined for them. Right there. Does that answer your question?
I'm thinking about one of the districts that we worked with that had, there was, when you do the student voice tonight, it's probably something you may notice also on your student voice, but they were talking about, it was about bullying, I think. So the task force, it was to address issues and to address social emotional developmental behavior was the learning, the strategic intent. The task force wanted to take a look further and dive into the bullying part. So what they did, I'm thinking of the custodial.
Yes.
This group had custodial staff on their core team, and they took over the task force and
Yeah.
everything. They decided that they wanted to go out and they wanted to talk to kids at the middle school. What do you mean by bullying? So they came up with this short questionnaire, and they actually went out and they questioned the kids, and they brought all the information back to the task force, who really sat down and was able to dive, look at it more closely, and then that group brought it back to the core team to examine. I just wanted to.
Yeah,
sometimes
no,
it's good
that
to
was a
have an
perfect example of that.
I think Dr. Ray had a question.
I think you answered it. I was going to ask you to give another example of a
okay.
non-instructional intent and how that would play out, but you just did it. You read my mind.
Right. So, and another example would be, take the parent community involvement. So one of the intents was that so there was a very low participation on the surveys as far as the community went. And so the strategic intent was by 2005, 95% of people will engage in this survey. And so some of the things they engaged in is making the surveys available at their local restaurants, at their local libraries and things like that. So they looked at how can we make it more available, how do we get the message out there more, and then what came of that also was the whole idea of PR on the mission, making sure that everybody's on the same page and going down the same road. So your job will be, and when right now you're kind of looking at the surface of all this data, once you start seeing patterns, and we decide probably next week is when we'll decide what the 3 task forces are, then you'll split into, and I think somebody kind of said this, then you'll split into groups and look at those specific areas, and you'll set strategic intents for those areas based on the patterns you're seeing, so that it sort of gets more focused. Does that make sense?
But
Okay.
can other people be on the task force other than the people in this room?
Well, that's the intent.
Oh, okay.
The intent is maybe 1 or 2 from this room will be on each task force, but the intent is that we really need to get more people involved to really make it, theirs, ours, yours. So yes, that's
That
the
was a
intent.
great question.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
No, it really is.
No.
No, it
was a
really
good
is.
question. We
Yes.
have had districts where they had a very hard time getting more participation. They had a hard time other than the core team. So the core team took on the task force work. We've had other districts who went out and were very surprised that they had about 40 people
Yeah.
sign up
Yeah.
for their task
Yes.
forces, which they were like, oh, we didn't think anybody else was going to want to do this. So they kind of took the core team, kept their role as the governing body, I call it the governing body,
Right.
or the guiding coalition, and the task forces just took off. And Tammy and I, we do the orientation with them, and we help guide them. So it depends on your district, how that's gonna end up and what it will look like.
Yeah, and ideally you will have people that have that specific expertise. So if you're talking about community being involved, you're really going to want a lot of community members involved. And if you're talking about student engagement, you're definitely going to want to have students involved in that. So those focus teams that even have a more laser-like focus on the content or the focus. Yes. So, any more questions? Yes.
You mentioned 3 task forces.
Yes.
Is that the number?
That's the normal. We'll see what happens. That's the norm. And so also we talked a little bit about, we talked about culture and climate and morale. And so a couple of things were discussed that maybe we could have you could have a task force on that, or maybe that is something that the core team might want to take on themselves. So we'll see how it evolves depending on what the data is saying. You could have 4 task forces. But you don't want your plan so big that it's not doable either, So you want to make sure that it's reasonable, that you can do it. Anything else? Okay. Did I miss anything on strategic
No,
intent?
good.
All right.
Good. Okay. So let's go back. We're going to actually tackle number 5 before we go and do number 3 before we get back to more data work. And I was going to interject one thing when Tammy finished. So I had talked to this table about, so the reason we're introducing strategic intent to you right now, even though we're not doing that work yet, as you're looking at data, we want you to start thinking about that maybe that's possibly one goal we'll want to look at. Because you're going to keep hearing tonight when we get into the next survey, we are seeing trends already, and I think you are also. You're going to see tonight, when you look at student work, you're really going to start saying, that kind of goes with what we talked about with the school performance scan was showing. It's kind of the student point of view. And that kind of ties into what the focus forums were saying. So maybe, now that we know our strategic intents are those big goals, maybe we want to start thinking about that being one of our strategic intents. So we're trying to lay a foundation for you for your future work with us. Okay? So let's jump back to the mission for a second, because that is one thing we do want to finish up and try to complete tonight. We had asked you to take a look at the statements and the work that we had and to see if we can refine any further. All right? Does anybody want to share? Do you want to share with your table first?
Well, I think there was a team, correct, that went back to it.
Okay.
Team went back to it.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for
No
that
problem,
reminder.
no problem.
I laugh because when I come here, I'm usually traveling from South Carolina here, and then I start my week. So it's like, okay. All right.
And
Go ahead.
facilitator of the team.
So, yeah, we nailed it down to one of each. Last time we had one on each side, a couple different variations. He's got I don't know if anybody wants paper copies to look at.
They're like, I want to see that.
I'll take care of this side.
All right.
You give me one. Okay. One more.
Thank you.
I got much slower than you.
So what we did was I copied each one, I put all the edits in, so each side of the page from the previous meeting, we had like 5 with all the edits in it, so we could look at it pretty easy. And we kind of, as a group, went through and did some changes that we thought were good. There's a couple new words in here. On the first one, the by multiple pathways, I know there was a lot of discussion over unique. Kind of changed it a little bit, so I mean, you guys can read them. Any input? Any words you don't like? Any?
Well, I think that the really exciting part about the meeting tonight is we're starting to see all of the data come together. Insights that we've heard from the previous meetings keep coming up, and we're just getting more and more clarity about the direction the school should be going in. It's really exciting.